The atmosphere in the studio was charged from the moment the cameras began rolling. The producers had teased the episode for days, a sit-down between Queen Latifah, the versatile actress, rapper, and talk show host, and Gladys Knight, the Empress of Soul. Viewers expected a warm, nostalgic conversation filled with laughter, memories of music history, and tributes to Gladys's remarkable legacy. The band played a smooth instrumental, the lights dimmed to a honeyed glow, and Queen Latifah strode out to thunderous applause. She radiated her usual confidence, her smile wide, her gestures animated. Then Gladys emerged, regal in an emerald green ensemble that shimmered beneath the spotlights. Her poise commanded instant respect. The audience rose to their feet, clapping as if in the presence of royalty. The first few minutes unfolded predictably. Latifah praised Gladys for her career, noting her 7 Grammy Awards, her decades of influence, and her ability to inspire multiple generations. Gladys accepted the compliments gracefully, her voice steady but warm, her eyes reflecting the wisdom of someone who had navigated the highs and lows of the industry. The crowd seemed enchanted, nodding along, smiling, laughing softly when Gladys shared small anecdotes about life on tour. But the energy shifted the moment Queen Latifah pivoted the conversation toward the state of the modern music industry. She leaned forward, resting her elbows on her chair, and with a half-smile asked, "Do you think today's artists, especially the young ones, are doing enough to carry on the tradition, or are they creating something entirely new that might even surpass the old ways?" The question hung in the air like a spark waiting for fuel. Gladys tilted her head, eyes narrowing slightly as though weighing her words carefully. She straightened her posture, clasping her hands in her lap. "Well, darling," she began, her tone polite but firm, "when we sang, it wasn't about shock value or who could be the loudest. It was about heart, soul, and truth. You couldn't fake it, you had to feel it. What I see now is too much noise and not nearly enough depth." The audience responded with applause and whistles of agreement. Queen Latifah arched a brow, her smile tightening. "But times have changed, Gladys," she countered smoothly. "The young artists today aren't just about vocals, they're addressing cultural struggles, social justice, mental health. They're rewriting the rules because the world they're living in demands it. You can't measure their art by the standards of the past." Gladys's lips curved into a small, controlled smile, but her eyes flashed with fire. "Progress doesn't mean disrespecting the foundation," she said evenly. "These young people wouldn't even be here without the path we carved. Respect matters, and I don't always hear it in what they're putting out." Gasps rippled through the audience. A few murmurs rose, some people clapping in agreement, others shaking their heads. Latifah leaned forward, her voice sharpening ever so slightly. "So you're saying their work doesn't matter? That the voices of this generation aren't valid just because they don't sound like yours?" Gladys sat a little taller, her presence filling the space. "What I'm saying is that excellence should not be optional. Respect is earned. When I hear something real, something with honesty, something with the kind of soul that reaches inside and grabs you, then I'll clap. But I won't pretend mediocrity is greatness just because it's popular." The reaction was instant. The studio filled with divided noise, some people clapping furiously, others booing softly, some too stunned to react. Queen Latifah's expression hardened for the briefest second before she forced another smile, clearly trying to regain control of the conversation. "That sounds a little harsh, Gladys," she said, her voice lower now. "This generation is out there grinding, hustling, putting themselves on the line. They're not trying to erase what came before, they're building on it." Gladys leaned forward, her voice dropping into a calm but pointed register. "Then let them build with respect. Don't tell me the craft doesn't matter anymore. Don't tell me I should lower the bar because people would rather dance than listen." The words hit like a hammer. The audience let out a collective gasp, the tension so thick it felt as though even the cameras hesitated. Queen Latifah pursed her lips, struggling to hold back a retort. The silence that followed was deafening. And then, with the kind of grace only someone of her stature could muster, Gladys stood up. She smoothed the folds of her emerald outfit, looked at Queen Latifah without blinking, and simply said, "I won't sit here and argue my legacy." The audience erupted, some cheering wildly, others gasping in disbelief, as Gladys walked off stage, head high, every step measured and unyielding. Queen Latifah sat frozen for a moment, gripping her armrest, her eyes following Gladys until she vanished behind the curtain. The cameras caught every flicker of emotion on her face, shock, anger, disbelief, and finally the forced composure of a host trying to salvage live television. The set, once filled with excitement, now buzzed with chaos. And though the show would continue, the image of Gladys Knight walking out, regal and defiant, had already seared itself into history. Backstage, the atmosphere was almost heavier than it had been on set. Gladys Knight moved with the grace of someone who had made her decision and would not waver, but her eyes revealed a storm. Crew members scrambled around her, unsure whether to intervene or give her space. One young assistant tried to approach with a bottle of water, murmuring, "Ms. Knight, can I get you?" But she waved him off with a curt flick of her hand. Her voice, low but resolute, carried across the hallway. "I've spent my life giving everything to this music. I will not sit in front of cameras and be made to feel small." Her words echoed, bouncing off the backstage walls. People exchanged uneasy glances, realizing this wasn't just a minor disagreement, it was something deeper, a collision of legacy and perception. Meanwhile, on stage, Queen Latifah was left sitting alone in her chair, the audience buzzing with murmurs that refused to quiet down. For a brief second, she looked stunned, almost as if she couldn't believe what had just happened. But then, with the practiced professionalism of someone who had faced her share of unpredictable moments, she straightened her posture, forced a smile, and turned toward the cameras. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said carefully, her voice calm but with an unmistakable tension beneath it, "sometimes passion takes over. That's the beauty of real conversation, you get honesty, even when it's uncomfortable." The producers rushed to cut to commercial, but the moment had already burned itself into memory. As the band played out awkward filler music, the audience leaned toward one another, whispering, gesturing, their phones already in hand. Within minutes, clips of Gladys rising from her seat and walking off stage hit Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. The hashtags came quickly. Hashtag Gladys walks off, hashtag Latifah vs Gladys, hashtag respect the legacy. By the time the next segment began, social media had exploded. Fans rushed to take sides. Some praised Gladys for standing her ground, calling her a living legend who refused to let herself be dismissed. "She built the road these young artists walk on," one tweet read. Another fan wrote, "Latifah is out of line. You don't debate Gladys Knight, you honor her." But others defended Queen Latifah, applauding her for championing younger artists and refusing to let the conversation become one-sided. Latifah wasn't being disrespectful, another post argued. She was just saying music changes with the times. Gladys didn't have to storm off. Within hours, celebrities began chiming in. A well-known R&B singer tweeted, "Much love to Ms. Knight, but I stand with Latifah. Our generation is out here grinding, we deserve respect too." Meanwhile, an older soul artist posted, "Gladys said what needed to be said. Too much mediocrity is being celebrated." The debate spilled into morning shows, podcasts, and entertainment blogs. Some outlets called it one of the most shocking talk show walk-offs in recent memory. Others framed it as a clash between eras, an inevitable confrontation between tradition and innovation. Backstage, Gladys sat in her dressing room, surrounded by her team. She had calmed somewhat, though her posture remained stiff, her chin held high. One of her longtime aides asked gently, "Do you want to issue a statement right away?" Gladys shook her head, "Not yet, let them talk, let them say what they want. My record speaks louder than any argument." Her voice carried both exhaustion and unshakable pride. She wasn't interested in damage control. She wanted the world to remember why she walked away, respect. Queen Latifah, however, moved quickly. Once filming wrapped, she huddled with producers, discussing how to address the fallout. Though visibly frustrated, she knew the importance of shaping the narrative. Later that evening, she posted a short statement on her Instagram, "Sometimes love looks like tough conversations. I will always respect Ms. Gladys Knight, even when we disagree. That's what growth looks like." The post garnered hundreds of thousands of likes within hours, but also reignited the fiery debate in the comments. By the next morning, major news outlets had picked up the story. Headlines blared across the internet. "Gladys Knight walks off Queen Latifah's show after heated clash," and "Music legends collide in fiery debate on respect and relevance." Talk radio dissected every word, with callers passionately defending one side or the other. For some, it was proof that the old guard refused to adapt. For others, it was a reminder that modern artists owed everything to the pioneers. Eventually, Gladys released a statement of her own. It was brief but powerful. "I have nothing but love for young artists, but I will never lower the bar for excellence." Music must have soul, and soul cannot be faked. I stand by that. Her words went viral, quoted in headlines, shared across platforms, and sparking even more heated discussions. The incident, rather than damaging either woman's reputation, only cemented their influence. Gladys became a symbol of unyielding artistic standards, a matriarch unwilling to let the past be erased. Queen Latifah emerged as a fearless host unafraid to spark conversations that others might avoid. Both women, in their own ways, came out stronger. Weeks later, the clip was still replayed on television and dissected on YouTube. It became not just a viral moment, but a cultural touchstone, a conversation about legacy, respect, and what music truly means. And though Gladys's exit had seemed abrupt, it was ultimately remembered as an act of defiance, a declaration that some standards are too sacred to be compromised. The night the Empress of Soul walked away would be etched in history, not as scandal, but as a clash of eras, one that forced the world to stop and think about where music had been, where it was going, and who had the right to define its soul.